Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and today for Book Trek 2025, we are looking at Picard, Second Self. So Book Trek is an event that I created. It's gone for a couple of years now, and I've got some great co-hosts slash bridge crew going along with me on this journey, where we essentially, for Book Trek, we read Star Trek fiction in the summer. It's just a fun way that I like to relax. This is like my version of a summer beach read, and we just kind of geek out over Star Trek. For my first real Star Trek read, my Book Trek read, I did choose Star Trek Picard, Second Self, which I think this is the fourth Picard book that came out. I did read the first two. I skipped the third one, which was about Cristobal Rios, who is a character in the first season of Picard I really found interesting, but I hated what they did with him in the second season. It seems like they just didn't know what to do with the character. So because he was kind of done so dirty in the second season, I just wasn't really inspired to read that book about him. I will say, Picard itself, it was a heavily flawed series. The first season I didn't mind as much. I thought it was kind of interesting. The second season was, I think, a disaster. And the third season, of course, is what it really should have been like in the very beginning. It was tons of fun, a beautiful love letter to the next generation. But that second season, it was pretty rough. Now, this one focuses on the character of Raffi, who was done better in Picard, even if she's not really a character that I ever entirely warmed up to. She was done okay throughout the third season. So I didn't mind really necessarily picking up a book that was about her. But it's not just about her. It's also something of, I guess you could almost call a swan song for Garak, that very enigmatic DS9 character, the Cardassian tailor on the station. So part of the book is actually from his point of view, right in the very middle, or at least a very young Garak. So in this one, we have, this takes place after the first season of Picard, and Raffi is kind of, getting her feet wet once again in intelligence. Like I said, she's a character that I never entirely warmed up to. Even the way that she's written here, it's not bad writing. I think that Una McCormack is a nice writer. Yeah, she's a good writer, but just the character, she's an intelligence officer in the field, but she is constantly, seems unsure of herself. I kind of expect an intelligence officer in the field to be a little more confident in their decisions and what has to be done. But anyhow, it took me a little while to warm up to the book. But then in the second half, like I said, it actually looks at three different time periods. And it bounces back and forth between them. But one of those time periods, and I'm going to stay away from spoilers for the most part, except for a few things here and there just to clarify, we get kind of the perspective of a young Garak, who's like maybe about 20 years old, and he's kind of just starting out in the Obsidian Order, and on like his first like real mission. And that kind of thing was interesting. That started really engaging me there. And then after that middle point, we kind of go back to Raffi's point of view. But at that point, I was much more engaged in the story and much more interested in where things were flowing. And ultimately, where it all ended up, I thought was kind of interesting. I didn't mind it as much. However, by the end, we are looking at Garak as an old man, and we don't really get his perspective. We see him through the eyes of Raffi. And one of my big wishes in this book was that we had gotten to see more from Garak's point of view, especially, where we see him so late in life, and especially considering the things that are going on around him there. I just kind of felt like that was a missed opportunity. And, since we had already seen Garak's point of view as a young man in the middle of the book, I don't see why we couldn't go back to him again, even bounce back and forth between him and Raffi in the second half of the book. I would have really liked that, and I think it would have, really made the whole thing more satisfying. But that's not what we get, right? We get Raffi, and the plot itself is kind of interesting. We also do get a little bit more from Elnor, another character that was really interesting in season 1 that they just didn't seem to know what to do with afterwards. But I thought that they did a nice job with him in this, although it doesn't entirely make sense that he's with Raffi. They try to justify it, but it doesn't totally work. But nevertheless, I think he's an interesting character. And Picard, he's just kind of in it, and he bookends the book. He's in the very beginning, at the very end. But really, it's a Raffi book. Yeah, I mean, overall, I would overall recommend it. I think that it goes to interesting places, especially at the end. There's kind of an interesting twist that happens. And, of this being the third Picard book that I've read, I think I maybe like the first two a little bit more. I especially like the second one. I think it was Dark Veil, was more of a Riker-focused book. I thought that one was really good. But yeah, I'm not at all, sorry that I read it. And, I thought I had a pretty decent time with it. I will be reading, I've actually already started it, reading the next book of the Picard series. I think it's called Firewall, and that one focuses on 7 of 9. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that one's written by David Mack. And just another comment that I just remembered for this. It's called Second Self. A lot of this book is, I wouldn't say about second chances, but a lot of it seems to be about how fortunes can turn. It all wraps around this one particular planet. And at one point in the history, the Cardassian, it basically first gets settled by the Bajorans. And then the Cardassians take over, and they are pretty much oppressing the Bajorans. But then the Cardassians find themselves being oppressed by the Romulans. And then the Romulans find themselves once again being, basically being oppressed by the Cardassians, who have once again gotten power. So there seems to be a theme in here that, you might be on top right now, but that might not last. Or the predator can very soon find themselves to be the prey, or the other way around. So we kind of had that changing fortune going back and forth in the book quite a bit. And a lot of the second self also seems to refer to second chances, or, another shot at a different part of your life, moving on to another stage. So maybe going from intelligence to something else. Or, I'm not going to get spoilery with this, but Garrick kind of goes on to another chapter as well. So we have all these people, from wartime to peacetime, they find themselves kind of having to reinvent their identities and try new things. So all those themes overall work pretty well in this. But yeah, so overall I would recommend it. If you read this, of course, I'd love to hear what you think about it. And yeah, if you've also read Firewall, I'd like to know what to expect from that. But anyhow, thank you, booktube.